The calling of God does not come dressed in comfort. It does not arise in the place of stillness or complacency, but in the place of unrest, of divine discontent. It begins with a stirring, a gentle nudge that refuses to be silent, a whisper in the middle of the night, a holy unease that says, "You were made for more." And so the voice comes. It came to Abraham in the land of Ur, calling him to leave his country, his people, his security. It came to Moses in the wilderness through a bush that burned but was not consumed. It came to Peter on the sea, amidst the wind and waves. And it comes to you, but it does not call you to stay where you are. The calling of God is never a summons to settle. It is always a call to rise, to leave, to move. You must leave the boat before you can walk on water. That boat for Peter was not just wood and nails. It was everything he knew. It was his trade, his training, his safety. It was his identity. It was his identity. But when Messiah appeared walking upon the sea, Peter was faced with a choice that would mark the rest of his life, to stay in what was familiar or to step into what was impossible. And so he stepped. And in that moment, the supernatural met the natural, the eternal pierced the temporary, and the impossible became real. This is the first key to fulfilling your calling. You must be willing to step out of the boat. The boat may be your routine, your job, your comfort zone, your fear, your reputation, your failures. Whatever it is, it must be left behind. For as long as you stay in the boat, you may be safe, but you will never see the miracle. You will never know what it means to walk on water. You will never know the power of the one who commands the sea. You will live in the realm of the possible, but your calling is to the impossible. The calling will always require you to leave something behind. It is the pattern woven throughout the scriptures. Abraham left his homeland. Ruth left her people. Moses left the palace. David left the pasture. Elisha left his plow. Matthew left the tax booth. Paul left his accolades. Every great calling begins with a leaving. And if you are not willing to leave, you are not ready to follow. The path is narrow, and it requires everything. And yet, in the leaving, there is a greater gaining. For what you leave behind pales in comparison to what you are called into. There is a cost, yes, but there is also a glory. A fisherman left his net and became a fisher of men. A persecutor of the church became its greatest apostle. A slave became a deliverer. The exchange is always in your favor, but only when you are willing to lose all. You say you are not ready. You say you are not worthy. You say you are not enough. And the truth is, you are not, and none of us are. But the calling is not about your ability. It is about your availability. It is not about your strength. It is about your surrender. It is not about who you are. It is about who he is. He does not call the qualified. He qualifies the called. Moses said, "I am slow of speech." Jeremiah said, "I am too young." Gideon said, "I am the least." But God called them anyway, because he does not see as man sees. He sees what you do not. He sees what he placed inside you. He sees your end from your beginning. And if he has called you, then he will also equip you. The enemy will try to keep you in the boat. He will speak fear, shame, doubt. He will remind you of your past, your failures, your weaknesses. He will say, "Who do you think you are?" But the question is not who you are. It is whose you are. When you step out in faith, you step not on the sea, but on his word. And his word does not fail. Peter walked on water not because he was strong, but because he obeyed. It was not his ability that held him up. It was the voice that said, "Come." And so the voice is calling you now. Not tomorrow, not next year. Now, because the time is short and the days are dark and the harvest is great. And heaven is not looking for the perfect. It is looking for the willing. It is looking for those who will step out of the boat, who will risk failure for the sake of obedience, who will leave behind comfort for the cause of the kingdom. You will never feel fully ready. You will never have all the answers, but neither did those who came before you. And still they stepped, and still they obeyed, and still they changed the world. The ones who change history are not those who play it safe. They are those who dare to believe. And what of the wind and the waves? Yes, they will come. Peter walked, and then he sank. But even in his sinking, he reached out, and the hand of Messiah was there. You may fall, you may stumble, you may doubt, but if you keep your eyes on him, he will lift you up. And even in your failure, he will work his purpose. For his strength is made perfect in your weakness. There is something he has placed within you, a fire, a vision, a burden, a call. Do not let it die in the boat. Do not bury it beneath fear. Do not silence it with excuses. Fan it into flame. Stir it up. Say yes. For to stay in the boat is to miss the miracle, but to step out is to find your destiny. The storm is raging, the waves are high, but the voice still calls, come, and your calling waits on the water. So will you leave the boat? Will you answer the voice? Will you step into the unknown for the sake of the kingdom? For those who walk on water are not those who wait for perfect conditions. They are those who hear the voice, fix their eyes, and step out. You were not born for safety. You were not called to survive. You were called to overcome, to walk by faith, to do what others only dream of. The sea is before you. The voice is calling. The moment is now. Will you step out? The calling of God is not a certificate, not a position, not a title. It is a fire. And fire is never still. It moves. It consumes. It purifies. It ignites. The calling is not a thing you possess, but a burden you carry, a fire in your bones that will not let you go. But fire must have fuel, and that fuel is sacrifice. There is no fulfilling of calling without the altar. The altar is not symbolic. It is the place where you lay everything down, where your dreams, your desires, your comfort, your will are all placed before the Lord as an offering. It is the place where you die so that you might truly live. It is the mystery that those who lose their life for His sake will find it, and until you lay your life upon the altar, the fire cannot fall. Elijah, the prophet, stood upon Mount Carmel and called down fire from heaven, but the fire did not fall upon an empty place. He first rebuilt the altar that had been torn down. Then he laid the sacrifice. Then he soaked it in water until the natural made the supernatural impossible. And only then did the fire fall. The second key to fulfilling your calling is to rebuild the altar and lay your life upon it. Without the altar, there is no fire, and without the fire, there is no power. Your calling is not fulfilled by striving or talent or ambition, but by surrender. There is a great deception that says your calling will flourish by doing more. But the truth is your calling flourishes when you become less. As John said, he must increase and I must decrease. The more of you that dies, the more of him that lives. And it is Christ in you that is the hope of glory. The altar is not a place of comfort. It is a place of agony, of tears, of letting go. It is where Abraham bound Isaac and raised the knife. It is where the Messiah prayed, not my will, but yours be done. It is where you must go daily and say, take it all, Lord. Your gifts, your plans, your strength, your failures, place them there. The calling demands the death of ego. It demands the burning of pride. It demands the surrender of entitlement. You cannot carry the cross and your crown at the same time. One must fall, and if you lay down your crown, he will lift you up. But if you cling to it, you will miss your purpose. You must choose which fire will consume you, the fire of sacrifice that leads to glory, or the fire of self that leads to ruin. The Lord does not desire empty vessels filled with self. He desires broken vessels filled with him. The world honors the strong, but the kingdom honors the surrendered. The world exalts those who build their own name, but heaven crowns those who die to their own name, that his may be lifted high. The calling is never about you. It is not for your fame or comfort or security. It is not to build your kingdom, but his. If you make it about yourself, it will collapse. If you make it about him, it will stand for eternity. Every man or woman used of God came through fire. Moses had to be stripped of Egypt. David had to be crushed in the wilderness. Joseph was betrayed, enslaved, imprisoned. Paul had to lose everything he once counted as gain. And the Messiah himself was pierced, crushed, and poured out. Do you think your calling will come without the same path? The fire is not punishment. It is preparation. The altar is not the end. It is the beginning. The fire of God is not only for power, it is for purification. He must burn away what is flesh so that what remains is holy. He must consume what is temporary so that what remains is eternal. You say you want to be used, but do you want to be broken? You say you want to do great things for God, but are you willing to suffer for his sake? Because the path to glory always goes through Gethsemane. The oil only flows when the olive is crushed. The fragrance only comes when the incense is burned. The crown only comes after the cross. You cannot bypass the altar and still expect the fire. The two are forever linked. The deeper the surrender, the greater the flame. The higher the calling, the more intense the refining. The altar is not a one-time event. It is daily. As Paul said, I die daily. Every day you must return to the place of surrender. Every day you must lay yourself down. Every day you must say, not my will, but yours. You may have to place your reputation, your dreams, your comfort, your relationships on the altar. But what is offered to God is never lost. It is returned in glory. When you surrender the temporary, you receive the eternal. When you give up what you cannot keep, you gain what you cannot lose. But the altar will test you. The fire will reveal your heart. When the crowds disappear, will you still obey? When the doors close, will you still serve? When the answer delays, will you still believe? That is the place where calling is forged. Not in the spotlight, but in the shadows. Not on the stage, but on your knees. When no one sees, when no one applauds, when only God knows. That is where the true servant is made. And once you pass through that fire, you will emerge not the same. The man who walks out of the fire is not the man who walked in. You will be changed. Your priorities will shift. Your desires will be purified. Your heart will burn for what his heart burns for. You will no longer serve for recognition, but out of love. You will no longer speak for approval, but out of obedience. And the fire that fell on you will fall through you. You will carry it. You will burn with it. And it will touch others. The world is not changed by talent or charisma or programs. It is changed by fire. It is changed by men and women who have been to the altar, who have died to self, and who now burn with heaven. That is how revivals begin. That is how nations are shaken. That is how generations are transformed, not by those who seek the platform, but by those who seek his face. You are not called to be impressive. You are called to be surrendered. You are not called to be successful. You are called to be faithful, and faithfulness begins at the altar. So come to the altar again, rebuild it, lay your life upon it. Say, "Here I am, Lord." Take it all and wait for the fire. It will come. And when it comes, your calling will be fulfilled. Not by your strength and not by your wisdom, but by the fire of God burning through a surrendered life. This is the sure key. This is the holy path. This is the way. Let the fire fall. Let the calling rise. Let his name be glorified. The fulfillment of your calling is not a sprint, but a journey. Not a one-time decision, but a lifelong pursuit. It is not about a single moment of glory, but about 1,000 moments of obedience. The third key to fulfilling your calling is to endure, to persevere, to remain faithful even when the path becomes dark, when the voice grows quiet, when the fruit is delayed. For the true test of the calling is not in the beginning, but in the middle, the long stretch of wilderness between the promise and its fulfillment. It is there that many grow weary. It is there that many fall away. It is there that many forget what God spoke in the light when they find themselves in the night. But the one who fulfills their calling is the one who endures. Not because they are strong in themselves, but because they choose to trust the one who called them. Because they anchor their soul not in circumstances, but in the word that cannot fail. The calling of God often begins with a vision, a dream, a holy encounter. Joseph saw sheaves bowing down, stars giving honor. Moses saw a bush burning with divine fire. David was anointed with oil in the presence of his brothers. The disciples heard the voice of the master say, "Follow me," but none of them stepped into their calling immediately. Joseph was thrown into a pit, sold as a slave, unjustly imprisoned. Moses was exiled for 40 years. For 40 years. David fled for his life, hiding in caves. The disciples faced storms, rejection, persecution. Why? Because the calling must be tested. The dream must be refined. The vessel must be prepared. The fulfillment must be forged in the fires of waiting. And if you will not endure the waiting, you will never see the promise fulfilled. There is a mystery in the delay. The silence of God is not his absence. It is his preparation. He hides you not to punish you, but to purify you. He delays not to destroy you, but to deepen you. The longer the delay, the greater the purpose. The longer the wilderness, the deeper the foundation. The waiting is not wasted. It is in the waiting that your roots grow deep. It is in the waiting that your faith is stretched. It is in the waiting that your motives are revealed. Will you serve when no one sees? Will you obey when there is no applause? Will you still believe when every outward sign says otherwise? Many start well, but few finish. Many say yes with joy, but turn away when trials come. The thorns of disappointment, the heat of persecution, the distractions of success choke the seed. But you must be like the good soil, holding fast, bearing fruit with patience. The calling is a race, and you must run to finish, not just to begin. As Paul said, "I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith." You must run with endurance, laying aside every weight, every sin, every distraction. You must press on, forgetting what is behind, reaching for what is ahead. Your calling is not fulfilled in emotion, but in devotion. Not in zeal alone, but in perseverance. Do not despise the day of small beginnings, for every great calling begins in obscurity. The Messiah was born in a manger, raised in a village unknown. For 30 years he lived in hiddenness, preparing for 3 years of ministry, and even in those 3 years he was misunderstood, rejected, opposed. Yet he endured, setting his face like flint toward Jerusalem, toward the cross. And because he endured, he fulfilled the greatest calling of all. So too, you must embrace the hidden place. You must be faithful in the little if you are to be trusted with much. You must be willing to serve when no one applauds, to labor when no one notices. The calling is not fulfilled on stages, but in secret. In prayer closets, in daily obedience, in quiet sacrifice, that is where greatness is born. And know this, your calling will be opposed. The enemy does not fear talent, but he fears obedience. He fears persistence. He fears those who will not give up. So he will try to discourage you, distract you, disqualify you. He will whisper lies in the silence. God has forgotten you. You missed your chance. You're not good enough. But these are lies. If God has called you, his calling is irrevocable. It does not depend on your strength but on his faithfulness. He who began the good work in you will be faithful to complete it. But you must hold fast. You must resist the lies. You must wage war with the promises spoken over your life. You must remind yourself of what he said. You must declare his truth when the enemy speaks fear. There will be days when you feel nothing, see nothing, hear nothing. But the fulfillment of your calling is not based on your feelings. It is based on your faith. It is easy to obey when you feel inspired. But the power is in obeying when you feel nothing. That is when your faith becomes real. That is when heaven takes notice. That is when the roots grow deep. You must learn to live by what God said, not by what you see. You must hold on to the promise even when everything around you contradicts it. That is faith. That is endurance. That is how the calling is fulfilled. And do not measure your calling by the standards of this world. Success in the kingdom is not measured by numbers, fame, or influence. It is measured by faithfulness. Did you obey? Did you persevere? Did you finish well? That is the measure. The widow who gave her 2 coins fulfilled her calling. The unnamed servant who brought water to Eliezer fulfilled her calling. The young boy with 5 loaves and 2 fish fulfilled his calling because they gave what they had, because they were faithful in their moment. Your calling is not to be someone else. It is to be faithful with what you've been given. So do not compare. Do not envy. Do not despise your portion. Embrace it, steward it, persevere in it, and you'll be counted faithful. The time will come when you will see the fruit. The vision will speak. The promise will be fulfilled. The dream will become a reality. But until then, you must endure. You must keep walking, even when the path is hard. You must keep sowing, even when the ground is dry. You must keep trusting, even when the sky is silent. For in due season you will reap if you do not give up. So rise again. Return to your first love. Remember what he spoke. Rekindle the flame. Strengthen your weak knees. Lift your weary hands. Fix your eyes on the author and finisher of your faith. The race is not over. The calling is not finished. And he is not done with you. The crown is for those who endure. The reward is for those who finish. The joy is for those who pressed on through the valley, through the fire, through the night, and did not quit. So endure. For in the endurance, the calling is fulfilled.